And thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, your host. I'll tell you, this is probably the time that our next guest joining us here on the program is going to be very valuable in discovering what we can do against these troubling times. We've got incredible inflation. We've got a bunch of bailouts to help big companies that have basically, from the perspective of the Main Street people, have been screwing them for years out of money. People retiring broke because they've lost fortunes, so they say, in the market themselves, so they're not prepared for that. We're still in a war, even since 2003, and it seems like it's never going to end. It kind of makes you wonder whether there's anything to feel good about. Well, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who's going to do just that for us. Gail Hand is joining us here on the program to share with us the magical benefits of laughter yoga. And Gail, I'd like to welcome you here to the Beyond 50 radio program today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you know, Gail, it's interesting. I was just reading yesterday in a book about the economy, and they brought up the situation with Enron and what was going on. And everybody now, when you hear Enron, they obviously know what that's all about. And they were talking about how a lot of the employees of the company were feeling very bitter at the fact that they lost all of their investments into the company, into their 401ks, and they were just constantly pointing fingers about the mismanagement and the government and why didn't these people step in to protect us. But there was one particular employee that said he got up and he dusted off and he actually created a website and began selling T-shirts that my boss got an extra bonus while I got those lousy T-shirts. So he found a way to find good in a situation that was relatively bad. This is one of those things that I believe that laughter yoga can really help us with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all in perspective. Things happen to us all the time that are perceived as disasters. And you know, we have people die in our families, we break up relationships, we lose our jobs, we lose our money. And the question is, how do you regroup? Laughter happens to be free. Doesn't cost any money. And I'm with a movement of people that do laughter exercises to boost your endorphins, to change your perspective on a situation, to help your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, and your physical health. It's a wonderful thing to do in a difficult time.
Yeah, tell us, Gail, exactly what laughter yoga is and how a person does it. How does it work?
Well, the way it works is there is a leader, and everyone comes together. And what you do is basically you don't need a sense of humor. And you gather together and do gentle breathing along with physical laughter exercises. So what you're doing is you're doing this laughter together. And as you laugh, you're stimulating laughter to stimulate laughter. So as you do the exercises, you laugh for real. So you fake it at first, and then you make it.
You fake it till you make it. I like that.
Isn't that great? We've heard that one before.
Now, how did you come to find out about laughter yoga yourself, Gail?
Well, I started out in the comedy business. I started out in 1989 in stand-up comedy in San Francisco, and then started speaking to college students about various topics on, alcohol and drug awareness and diversity and leadership, things like that. And then I realized that stress became is always really a cause of them drinking and doing drugs and acting out. And I realized that reducing stress was something that I needed myself, and I needed to find out how to do that. And I love to laugh, and laughter was one of the things that brought me the most joy. So I found the World Laughter Tour, actually online, surfing one day, and was developing a laughter program myself, and it integrated very well with what I wanted to do with college students, and I started speaking to corporations about the power of laughter at work. And I started a company called The Power of Laughter, and I started doing these laughter exercises with companies as a keynote, as a lunchtime speaker, and conferences. And now I do it with university students. I actually work with a lot of athletes. I'm in Oklahoma right now, in Tulsa, and I've talked to several colleges around Arkansas and Oklahoma about how laughter you can actually get higher from laughter than you can from drugs and alcohol. So that's a wonderful plus. And get the students doing laughs, things that they can actually do on the field to reduce stress. Say they're losing a game, they gather together and do some quick laughter exercises, and they really get it. They get it. They get tired from it, and they get winded, and they have a really good time.
Now, when you say they get it, what exactly was it that they were getting?
They understand the benefits, because
Okay,
when
I see.
when you can physically demonstrate to an athlete that they can belly laugh for 20 seconds and get a similar aerobic effect to rowing for 3 minutes.
Wow.
That it's a wonderful thing. I say, how many of you still want to row? And you have one person out of 200 raise their hand, and they look at the coach and say, okay, and they say, fine, we're doing 3 minutes of laughing. 20 seconds of laughing is a long time for your belly, and you can work your abdominal muscles by laughing. You can actually feel it. If you put your hands on your belly, you kind of stick it out, and you feel try to find your abs. You can do it with me right now. Do it with me right now. Put your hands on your stomach. Okay. Put your hands on your stomach.
My hands on my tummy.
Hands on your tummy. Okay. Now put the fingers into your belly. Kind of push your belly out a little bit. Put your abdomen out a little bit. And do this. Ho, 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 ho. Really feel that stomach. Ho, 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 ho.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can feel that in your belly. And so what we do is a group of exercises that work different muscles in your body. And in between, you clap. So when you clap, you have acupressure points in your hands, and those acupressure points are related to your internal organs. So you're giving yourself an internal massage.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. But, you can send oxygen to your brain, oxygen to your body, and help condition your heart muscle, all just by laughing. So we use sounds ha-ha, hee-hee, and ho-ho, and the ha-ha works your heart. The hee-hee helps your brain, stimulate your brain, and the ho-ho works your abdominal muscles.
So it sounds like wonderful. It always made sense to me that laughter is good for you, because just as you said, how you feel, how it vibrates and resonates through your whole body. And it always bothered me when I would be at some, certain jobs where I would try to make a joke out of something through the course of work. Well, there's a time for laughter and there's a time for not. It's like, wow, you're wrapped a little too tight for something like this. But, when you've got an 8 or a 12-hour day, what do you need to be all serious about it if the work is getting done? And to me, having a comical, lighthearted approach to work usually meant better quality work, because at least you were enjoying yourself whether you liked what you were doing or not.
Exactly. And, the economic turmoil is not going to turn around anytime soon. We keep hearing it every day on the news. I'm in airports quite a bit, and I can't sit by a TV anymore. Because it's the same
rehashing of the same old junk.
How many jobs yesterday were left, and on and on. And the point is, do what makes you happy, and find the humor in your life. It is possible, even in difficult times. I'm someone that needed it probably more than anyone. I've had a lot of people in my life that were close to me die. Probably almost 30 people, friends, family. Since I was little, and. I needed to find the joy in my life, because if I focused too much on the negative, I'd be really depressed.
Exactly.
And I really found my humor first. I wore a body cast in high school, and that was quite interesting. I was a freshman in high school, and I wore a body cast. So I couldn't see my feet, and first thing that happens, I walk into school and flip on a piece of paper and knock myself out. That was the very first thing of that entire year that happened to me. So I thought, lying there I'm in the hall, as the kids are stepping over me, going to their locker, I thought, I'm going to have to find the humor in this situation. And that was the year, man. That was for me. I went skiing in it. I went skateboarding. I did all these crazy things to keep my spirits up. And that was a real test of my character that year. From then on, I found the humor in every situation. I just had to, So.
Gail, we've been doing the program for about 5 years, and it's funny the different aspects of health that we cover, and you just don't really see or hear a lot about these things on a regular basis through whatever ways that you tend to get information. And we've discovered that some of the most common sense things can be the most incredible ways to preventing you from getting sickness and diseases. And there's no doubt that it's been made even in science for the most part. That cancer, for instance, that there is a true mind-body connection to cancer for the most part. How you think and how you feel can either create it or prevent it. And when you take a look at something like laughter yoga, one of the most important things for our body to do is the fastest way that it expels toxins in the body is through the breath. And a lot of us, especially in the West, we do a lot of shallow chest breathing, so we're not pushing all that nasty stuff out, and you can see where laughter can be valuable just right there alone.
Right. Absolutely. And you're releasing chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. So that's how you help with the new perspective and positive mental attitude, through a difficult time. So you'll have people that will walk in. I have people all the time that walk in. They're either, if it's a business meeting, they're sitting there closing their, folding their arms and saying, "You're not going to make me laugh." Well, it's not what it's about. Yeah. But when they leave, they're smiling. They're hugging people. It really changes people's attitudes. I've had so many people. I had a senior group once, and I work a lot with seniors. I do laughter clubs for seniors for about 4 years now in Portland, and I love doing it. And I bring my little dogs with me, so I do a little doggy therapy afterwards. So that's enjoyable as well. And anyhow, so what happens? This woman walked in, and she said afterwards, she walked up. She says, and there was a news reporter there, which was kind of fun. "I walked in and I had a splitting headache, and now it's completely gone."
Better watch out, the pharmaceutical companies will start coming after you.
Point taken. Exactly, point taken. It physically really helps you. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. What have been some other examples of people who have come in to take laughter yoga as far as mental or health, whatever the case may be, where you've seen just dramatic results and transformations?
Well, individually, I've had people come in that are depressed. So I have lots of psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists in Portland send their patients, as an assignment, go to a laughter club, find a laughter yoga club. And I have had people come in, and they come in, and you can tell, okay, they're in therapy. That's good. They're not looking too happy, and they leave and they're smiling. And I say, "How do you feel?" "I feel so much better." And if you change that perspective in your brain, which is what laughter does, because it's releasing the chemicals in your brain, they can't remember what they're depressed about. Even if it's for a half hour or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they know it helped them, and they feel good. It changes your biochemical state.
I was just thinking, too, Gail, like in this situation where, as you said, you can't even watch the television anymore because the news is all the same. It's never good. As if it ever really was, for the most part. But the funny thing is when you see people, I even know people who are getting laid off from their jobs as well, and I try to share a perspective that says, just lighten up, something will come along to help you out, don't worry about it. And it's very difficult for people that are in situations like that to actually see the light because they can only see and experience what they have now. But I could see where having laughter as part of, say, a program, if you will, to help kind of change your perspective, would actually create answers for you without you even being aware that this could actually happen.
Right. And it can be a form of meditation for people. Mm-hmm. Because if you're changing that biochemical state, you're changing those thoughts in your brain. So you're going somewhere else. As long as it's not focusing on that specific problem, you are somewhere else, and you go somewhere else. You can lower your blood pressure, and your attentiveness to that problem will shift to something else.
Now, you had mentioned earlier in the program, Gail, that even people who don't have a sense of humor can actually learn and benefit from this. That's really possible?
It is. You don't need a sense of humor to go to participate in laughter yoga. What happens is you're just laughing. That's all you do is you do laughter exercises. So, for instance, we do a greeting laugh called aloha, just like they do in Hawaii, say hello. But the aloha has a ha in it, so we add a couple ha-has. So let's say there's 20 people in the room. We would all throw our arms up in the air. It's great. It's really fun. You throw your arms up in the air. Yeah, aloha. So you keep going. And you walk around to every single person in there. Throw your arms up and greet them and say, "Hello!" Just like that. And
you're in an airport right now, so that makes this even funnier.
I found a place to hide. I'm hiding by some elevator.
You should be out there in the middle talking and let people experience it. I'm really on a radio show. I'm not worried because my flight's delayed.
Well, funny you should say that. I have been on 2 planes. I believe they were both Southwest. No, one was Frontier. One was Southwest, one was Frontier. We were really delayed. and we went to another airport, and then we almost got to Denver and had to go back. It took me 16 hours one time to get from LaGuardia to Denver, and it was crazy. But at one point, the passengers were so disgruntled, and I walked up to the flight attendant, and I said, look, I'm a laughter yoga leader. Do you mind if I do some laughter exercises with the patrons? They're just going to sit here and sitting here grumbling.
Yeah,
please,
grumbling,
please,
exactly.
please. So I couldn't do the whole plane, so I went to the back half of the plane, and I told everybody who I was and what I was going to do. But about half of them did it. So, I had about 25 people laughing, and then afterwards, okay, that was weird, but we liked it,
Uh-huh.
So,
like the Jack Daniels.
Yep, that was good. My diaphragm feels different, yes. Yes, I generally have a very good sense of humor. I went to Disney. I decided not to participate in the recession, so I went to Disney World for a couple of days. I had a gig in Florida, and donned my Grandma Lottie costume. I dress as my grandmother because I am still a comedian in my heart, and put the Grandma Lottie outfit. I have a house coat and a gray wig, and I walked up to all of the characters in Disney and took pictures with them. So it was really, I have a jovial spirit, obviously, to begin with. So I'm a good candidate to teach people how to lighten up.
Absolutely. Again, like I was talking earlier about the job, how you tend to have people that think being serious is going to get the work done to a high level of quality, and I say no. The number one way that you get quality work done is that work becomes like play. And certainly if it's something that you're not enjoying, laughing about it can actually make it feel a lot easier to do.
Exactly. And there's lots of different things that you can do. There are companies that get very creative about lightening up the stress of their employees. Some companies will have something called Frisbee Memo Day, where that day they have to write their memo instead of typing it in an email. Write it, put it on a soft Frisbee, and throw it to someone that you're going to send it to. That's the whole thing.
Yay!
They do that.
I like that.
I love that
too. Crazy there. Now, talk about the other things. What are some of the other important aspects of being in a laughter program where this can be effective?
Well, it relieves muscle tension. So you're psychologically feeling stressed, or you're physically feeling stressed, and you're emotionally, spiritually feeling stressed. It will enhance your relaxation process. So it's like a new exercise routine, giving yourself not only an internal massage, but you can relax the rest of your muscles as well because of the yogic breathing. So you're obviously breathing air into your muscles, and then you're expelling it by a laugh. So you breathe in, like that. So you're really expelling that tension out of your muscles. So you're working your abdominal muscles, you're strengthening your muscles, and then you're also easing your back muscles. And when you have, what I found to work the best for me is if I'm having a muscle cramp, I will use the laughter. I thought, I've got to practice what I preach, because there I was stuck in a hotel one day in the about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't want to jump up and down and get rid of the cramp. I said, I'm just going to breathe really hard. So I lay there and and my cramp went away. So you really can breathe air into your muscles and relax them.
That's great.
Also helps. It's wonderful. Also helps prevent disease as well. Helps prevent heart disease, and we work a lot with cancer patients. Helps ease their stress. And there was Norman Cousins donated a lot of his money to UCLA, and they were doing studies with cancer patients, kids who had cancer, and they would show them funny videos. One study group, funny videos, and play games with them and had them laughing. And then for 6 weeks, did the other group, and they did show a significant reduction in pain because of the laughing.
That's phenomenal, just to think that, here you have a natural type of aspirin, if you will, that you have available 24/7. And, people would rather go the other direction than just complain and snivel and whine about their pain. I actually know somebody who's like that now who just became, I guess, if you will, a type 2 diabetic. And I said, well, here's a DVD. You can actually turn that around. Have you watched it yet? And it's been a couple of weeks, and he hasn't done that. He always comes to to work generally, and he's mopey and he's whining about how he feels. He's got to take his insulin. I'm like, you're going totally the wrong direction. You need to turn this around a little bit. At least have a positive outlook and the possibility that you can turn this around, and certainly start laughing and being humorous a little bit more. So
exactly.
Now
we all have our own afflictions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we all have our own afflictions. It's any of the three. I have a brother who also has diabetes, and he has a very good sense of humor. But I've been trying to teach him some laughter yoga for a while. Mm-hmm. Still working on him.
And has it worked for him, or?
Oh no, when he does it, he's I'm tired. Okay, I can feel that. That's good. Yeah. There's nobody that doesn't like it. It's wonderful. Kids are great. Kids laugh an average of 200 to 400 times a day, mm-hmm. and adults laugh 12 to 15. Mm-hmm. So this is a wonderful thing to help us increase our laughter ratio in our lives.
It's funny, Gail. I remember when I was probably about 8 years old, I think, 7 or 8, probably 8 or 9, right around there, I can't remember, but it was around that age. And I was allegedly diagnosed with ADD, but I was always playful and lighthearted. My disruption in the class was usually to try to make people laugh, to be funny, not necessarily to be disruptive in a negative way. And so here I'm seeing this psychologist, if you will, or psychiatrist, and apparently it was said to him, or he said to my parents, well, he really needs to cut down on his laughter because that could be disturbing. And I just remember that I was in the living room one time, and my dad said something that I thought was funny about some guy that was on television. And I started laughing. He says, you really need to watch that. You were told, to try to curb your laughter. And as a kid, that made no sense to me whatsoever, how that could be, harmful.
Exactly. And you'll hear that from kids quite a bit, from kids, and since I work with seniors, I was working with a memory care facility in Portland, and just to show you, because when people tend to get dementia, they you don't know what they're going to say. You have no idea. Mm-hmm. And it was early on in my laughter yoga career, and I was in this space, and I had everybody going ho ho ha ha ha, and they were clapping ho ho ha ha ha, and this woman just completely went off, and she ho ha 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 wah, wah, wah. And she went crazy. She was already crazy, but she went further down the line. She went further down the line, and I stood there waiting for her to stop, and because I didn't want to. You don't interrupt them. She's having a good time. Leave her.
Right.
So I looked at her, and then I said, "Are you done?" And she said, "Oh, lighten up." Told me to lighten up.
Yeah, really. What are you trying to do? You're a laughter guru, and you're telling me to lighten up? Well, what's the matter?
Exactly. I thought it was pretty funny. Yeah.
Now, do you consider yourself to be a laughter guru? It sounds like you've got all the makings of it when you make half of an airplane basically laugh right in the middle of everything. So.
Absolutely. Got the athletes laughing, the seniors, the kids. There's really not a group I don't like working with. Dogs also. Did you know dogs laugh as well?
Well, that's what I was going to ask next.
Yeah.
How this can actually help with pets. I don't know if cats do, but, certainly they've got lighthearted attitudes. But
I'm more familiar with dogs because I have anywhere from 2 to 6, depending on the day. I have 2 dogs, and then I share 2 dogs, and my parents have 2 dogs. So when you never know how many dogs I have. Right now I don't have any right in front of me this minute, but dogs laugh. This is the sound that dogs. It seems like they're yawning, but they make rah, 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 like that. Mm-hmm. That's the sound they make, and they do. My dogs laugh quite a bit. In fact, they watch the Animal Planet. My dogs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they laugh at the alligators.
But if somebody has, say, a gecko or a Nile crocodile out there, laughter might come a little harder.
Hard to say. Not my expertise. Could ask Bindi. Bindi would know.
Now, how can people find out where they can participate within a laughter program? Are these like all over the country, or do you just?
They are. Yeah, they're actually all over the world. The 2 organizations that have a listing of laughter clubs in different states are it's the World Laughter Tour, which is www.worldlaughtertour.com, and the other is laughteryogainternational.org. And both of those list all of the different laughter leaders around the country. And, laughter yoga was started in 1994 by a man named Madan Kataria, who's a doctor, who prescribed not just medicine for his patients, he prescribed laughter. So at first they started, met in a park in Bombay and in Mumbai, and started telling jokes. And then they ran out of jokes. And then they decided, okay, he started creating yogic-type breathing with laughing on purpose. And now there are over 300 laughter clubs in Mumbai. Wow. They meet in parks all day long. That's a rough estimate. Last time I saw him, he said that was as best they could guesstimate. But there are about 5,000-6,000 laughter leaders around the country. And that was 1994. In 1998, he met up with Steve Wilson, who's a psychiatrist in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. And he started the World Laughter Tour here in the U.S. So there are two schools now. There's the Laughter Yoga International and the World Laughter Tour, and they both, they're very similar, but there's a little bit more yoga involved with the Laughter Yoga organization, a little bit more breathing. And what I do is I really do a cross between the two, because I've also got my comedy and my speaking background, and I really believe that each person learns differently. And I like taking a break and talking, in between people, being tired from the laughing, because they do really, you do get winded. And I like to talk about the things, we have a thing called good-hearted living that Steve created. And everybody has a different take on it. Everybody does it individually. But every day of the week, you can work on one thing to bring more joy to your life. So, for instance, Monday could be for acknowledgement. How can you acknowledge your coworkers? Just for the heck of it, give them a compliment. Give every person that day in your life a compliment, because it makes you feel better, makes them feel better, and it's free, just like laughter. So that's one thing. The next day you could work on flexibility, because when you're inflexible, nobody wants to work with you. You're not a lot of fun to be around. Yeah.
Really.
Right?
You got sort of a Bert situation going on there, the scowl that's continuous.
Exactly. And, we have little sayings like, for flexibility, the tree that bends in the wind never breaks, except for in an ice storm. That's my Portland joke. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Wednesday's for gratitude. So the best way to be in a bad mood is to think about all the things that you don't have. But if you can think about the things, especially right now in this economy, it's like, oh, I have a job. That's a good thing. I have food. I have a roof. I have friends. I have family. Whatever it is that makes you happy. I have animals that love me every day, no matter how much money I have. Think about that one. That's my favorite one. Because my dogs, they love me every day. They don't care about how much my paycheck is. Mm-hmm. They're fun. Dogs really ground you. They keep you simple. I love it. So then there's kindness and forgiveness, and then the weekends, of course, are for chocolate.
There you go.
Everybody needs to eat more chocolate. And
totally
we know
agree,
chocolate's a
especially
vegetable.
the box of chocolates where you never know what you're going to get.
So those are always fun. That's kind of like a laughter club. You never know what you're going to get. You walk in, you have absolutely. Sometimes you laugh so hard that you cry. Mm-hmm. You can do the thing that a lot of people walk away with is, wow, this is really fun. This is great, but I don't know if I could do it. You can laugh by yourself. Because people think they're stressed at work. How can I apply this to my job? So they can work on gratitude to change their mindset. They can work on flexibility to change their mindset. They can work on compliments to just really be a better person and to help the positiveness of the office. And they can also laugh silently. So you can right now. You and I could laugh right now silently and really work your abs. So you try to do it right now. Let's have 2 seconds of silence. Go. You feel that?
Yeah, I do, absolutely.
See? So it's quite possible to get a workout and send oxygen to your body, change that perspective by laughing silently. That's called, Billy Streen, one of my friends, calls that laughterbation.
Laughterbation.
Yeah. He just wrote a book called Ho Ho Jojo. It's a great book.
I like that. I'll have to remember that when I'm talking to other people. Have you experienced laughterbation? Huh?
Like, what is that? I just thought that was a genius of him. He's up in Edmonton.
Gail, it was interesting that you brought up the fact that people need to try to lighten up in the office or at work and just be grateful and thankful, as you talk about, that they're in a situation that can be better than someone else's. And I was remembering a movie that I'd seen a good few years ago where it starred Alan Arkin, and he was an office manager of an insurance company, and there was a guy that was among his group that always really had a positive outlook about everything. And you could just see that he sort of had it in for this particular person, even though he wasn't really doing anything wrong, and he was lighthearted, laughing, always sharing fun and good stories to the coworkers and salespeople. And then finally, the right opportunity came where he had a real opportunity to actually sort of lay him off or get him out of there. And you're wondering the whole time, why does he have it in for this guy when everybody seems to really enjoy him? He's got a positive outlook about what he's doing. And so it goes along through the movie, and the next thing you know, things are starting to get a little worse there in the office. Sales aren't coming in, and you could hear the guys starting to talk about, boy, it sure would be nice to have some of his cheer around here about this time right now, and they were beginning to miss him. And so then the opportunity came along that he was the office manager, Alan Arkin, was able to actually help this guy that he couldn't wait to get out of the office to actually get work. And he did it in a very indirect way to where it wasn't going to be that he was recognized for the effort. And in short, basically, he ran into him out on the street. He says, the weirdest thing just happened. He was upbeat. See, I told you things would work out. He finally realized and smiled just the magic of what this guy was really giving to the world, especially in that little office space. And, if we could just, more of us could just do this anywhere we are, whether it's at the supermarket, and just give that to him. Like you said, it's free, and it's just amazing what you can do in your world.
Exactly. Spread it. Spread the cheer. Spread the cheer. Spread the cheer. So I started my website is galehand.com, or people can type in it's portlandlaughterclub.com, and I meet usually at least once a month, and there are a couple other laughter yoga places in the city as well.
Well, it is laughter yoga, folks. It's time for you. If you're going to bring peace and happiness to the world, this is the way you start doing it. And our guest today, Gail Hand. And Gail, thank you again for joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
You bet. And, it's always an interesting thing to be able to get the opportunity to share with people out there through this program ways they can kind of change their perspective and see that life is really worth living day to day, minute to minute to minute. And joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is our next guest, Dr. James Torgerson, and we're going to talk about urban shamanism and economics. And I'd like to welcome Dr. James Torgerson to the Beyond 50 radio program today. How are you doing, James?
Pretty darn good, actually.
Pretty darn good.
Phoenix today.
Have you gotten your laughter in yet?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, very good.
My daughter's down in Phoenix with me, and she's got 4 dogs, and they sing together.
They sing together, a quartet.
They sing together. They call it singing, but
Well, dogs do have their own harmony. Now, let's talk about what is urban shamanism. I don't know that I'm really familiar with that term.
Urban shamanism is what we call the gift of being in touch with nature in an urban setting, which, given the modern world, is most of the world. So an urban shaman is someone that teaches people, that studies, that does the sociology and all the rest of it. Basically helps people reconnect, and it's healthier that way, it's stronger that way. It's wonderful. So I've got a burgeoning client base. Can always use more clients, of course, but, it's exciting.
Now, tell me, James, when people come to you, what is usually their primary focus of why they're coming to see you?
Most people just feel out of touch. They feel like the modern world just isn't giving them what they need. There's too much electronics and too little dirt. There's too much flash and flare and not enough rock and stone and stuff like that. So we do things to help people get back to where we feel the roots should be. So like today, for example, I'm xeriscaping a yard, which is a term we use for putting in plants that are natural to at least the kind of area. So here we are in Phoenix putting in agaves and cactuses and gravel and stuff like that. And the people here are very happy with it. They're out there digging in the dirt, and they're enjoying talking to their plants and just, basically saying, this makes a lot more sense than where I am at the office all day long. Mm-hmm. So that's a big piece of it. We call it spiritual economics, which is a term. The economics term is a term that Dennis Weaver came up with, the actor that died about 2 years ago. Good friend of mine, but his concept was that the only way to really deal with ecology smart in a modern world was to make it economically viable. So he called it economics for ecology economics. And these are the people that figure out ways to make houses that are off-grid and how to reforest forests and how to remarsh marshes and replane plains and all that kind of stuff, because the economics is there. Not because you're taxed or penalized if you don't, but simply because it makes sense to your bottom line. A house like this, we're not going to pay anything for water for the yard. They're not going to be out there watering, Kentucky bluegrass in the desert of all things and stuff like that, so it makes economic sense.
Mm-hmm. That's really quite interesting, because you see, especially this day and age, with everything that's going on here in the United States, people losing their homes, their jobs, and the government trying to promise with all these stimulus packages, oh, don't worry, we're going to try to take care of this. It's going to get better, but just kind of hang on. And it seems to me this would be one of those wonderful opportunities for people to sort of wake up, if you will, and say, but how can I do things differently, seeing that this traditional way that we bought into in the first place just isn't working?
Absolutely. In fact, for the past week and a half, we've been putting together a package for Obama and the Western governors especially, where it simply says, look, guys, don't just throw more money out there and say, go out and buy a standard mortgage with this cheap money. What we would like to do is say, let's earmark, say, $10 million. Compared to how much is out there, this is not like even chump change.
10 million is like
$10 million. Exactly, And what's insane is that we're in this paradigm where we think we have to have a house, around here to be like a $500,000 house. Well, we've proven over and over again that for, $4,000 or $5,000, you can build a really beautiful home with a lot of traditional techniques like cob or earth ships or rammed earth or a bunch of other possibilities. 3 bedrooms, off the grid, so you never pay any utilities for the rest of time and eternity. And they're beautiful homes. They're sculpted, absolutely gorgeous, and I can't figure out why more people aren't doing them. But see, at that kind of a rate, think of how many homes. You could put 100 people in homes for the cost of one home under standard mortgage thing, or 100 families, rather. So what we're trying to do is send this package off and say, look, earmark a certain chunk of it for smart building. No sewer lines, no water lines, no electrical lines. And once you're in your house and you own it and you own the ground that you're on, that's it. You're safe. You're secure for the rest of ever. And they're beautiful homes. So we're excited about it. We were down at the Hopi Reservation in northern Arizona last October, and we built a 3-room add-on for a clan family down there, the Water Clan, in Shunkapovi village. And it cost us about $1,200 to build this 3-room add-on. And the whole house's economics went down because of it. We tripled the size of the house, and the utility bills dropped to almost nothing because of the stability of the new add-on we put on. They're thrilled with it.
I'm kind of curious, when you build a home that's off the grid, you're saying, pretty much little or no utilities, then what do people usually do, I guess, for power? I'm sure there are pretty obvious answers, but let's explore that a little.
The first and most obvious answer is to look at what you're using energy for. And the vast majority of houses out there are for heating and cooling. And if your house has a real stable wall because it's hyper-insulated or because it's real thick with packed dirt like an earthship is, then they're stable. And it's like extruding a cave out of the ground. And here in the Arizona area where I am right now, the average year-round temperature underground is around 68 degrees. That's room temperature.
Oh, yeah, that's very comfortable.
If you can build your house into the ground effectively, either by digging into the ground, which not many people here do for some reason, or you can do it by building real thick earthen walls above, just like the people used to do here with adobe and hogans and stuff like that, then your house is already about 80% of the way to being energy-free. Then you look at the rest of your lifestyle and say, what else do I need? Now, if you can get along on daylight hours, as a lot of people used to do.
With candles if they wanted to read into the wee hours.
If you absolutely had to, but see, now we have a lot of technologies that work really well. And one of the things we do at the Open Mind Foundation, where I'm the president, is to take technologies out there and say, okay, you guys are making this really high-tech windmill, for example, $15,000. What's your payback on a $15,000 windmill, assuming the local city codes will let you stick up in the wind stream at all? Well, it's basically forever. So people do it because they think it's a good idea, but even so, if you look at the big land print of a big windmill, you've got to figure you've got to mine this to make this stand. You've got to pull the oil out to make the fiberglass. You've got all this high-tech stuff. There are cheap ways to do exactly the same thing. You can put a little windmill that runs along the ridge of your house and makes use of the wind that comes up the roof of their house. It's called the Venturi effect that focuses right at the top, which is why people always use shingles at the top of their roof. And for $500 instead of $50,000, you can build one that sweeps the same amount of wind, and you can power your house up. There are also new good technologies coming out for solar voltaics. You know, these membrane technologies are putting up plants like crazy for those, and it's finally going to be cheap enough to actually make sense. So we have options. We have water, we have wind, we have tides, we have all kinds of ways to get power up there. The problem I run into is a lot of people have a standard American house, you know, and they say, wow, I want to power this with solar. I said, well, in the first place, you're stupid. Why are you living in a house that's 10 times the size of what you need, doing things in all these different rooms? We have a room for our bed. We have a room for our kitchen. We have a room for our computer. We have a room for our... Why not put all those in a single room and make it smart, and then either hyper-insulate it or make it hyper-thick on big rammed earth walls? Then you can sit down and say, wow, this is going to cost a tenth of what I'm paying anyway, just because, you know, there's not much to do it with anymore. You know, we've gotten this weird ethic in place, especially in the Western world, where we think that bigger is better and huge is whatever. I helped some people put a clay finish on a wall in just outside of Salt Lake City last year, and this has like an 8,000 square foot footprint. That's just the footprint. It's a 4-story house, $8 million house, and who's living there is the guy's wife. Now that to me is insane. It's ecologically unsound. I hated working there. I mean, the money was nice, but you know, I hated working there because every time I went there, I thought, you know, for the cost of heating and cooling this place for one day, I could build 10 family houses and put 10 people off the streets and into a house that they owned forever. And if you own your house, you don't pay utilities, and you grow your own food, you know, you can go to work one day a week, you know, to cover your fun stuff. You don't have to live low-tech either, you know. These really nice houses, you look at and say, wow, I only spent $5,000-$6,000 on this house. I can afford to buy a really nice plasma TV with a satellite uplink, you know. I can afford to do some cool stuff that I could never have afforded before, and I still don't have to work very often because I'm not in debt.
Well, that's just the key. It's quite interesting because I've been reading through a book, and I had the opportunity to interview its author about a week or so ago, and it's simply titled Killing Sacred Cows. And he was in the financial services planning industry for a lot of years and just said, you know, it really stinks what's going on here. And he got out, and what it basically is, the subtitle is Breaking the 401k Myth. And he talks about how we bought into all these systems over the many years that banks have fed to us, that mainstream media has fed to us. And they're saying, you know, that you want to get it, like, for instance, a 401k, or you want to get into an IRA. This is what you want to do to retire. This is how much you should have in it. Goes on and on and on, excuse me, in this book. But he turns around and he says, why did we buy into this if it's not working? And one of the key elements that he talks about consistently through his book is finding your soul purpose. And that's where you're going to be measured by true wealth, is are you really happy and engaged in what you're doing? And if you could imagine that when you talk about urban shamanism here, James, that you're building a home that you can afford to have all the things that you really want to have. And in most cases, people, there isn't a whole lot that they want, but to be happy. And you can see where you begin to have that time and space for your soul purpose to go out and help others to get the same.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a friend who grew up in Nairobi, and his family, for as many generations back as they can find, were healers, and they lived in this same hut, and everybody's happy there. He says, what's wrong with you Americans? You come over here, you're making $300,000 a year, you live in this huge house, you've got 3 cars, you've got a boat, you've got all this yada-yada stuff, and you're all miserable. He says, we were over there with an average income of $100 a year, and we were ecstatic. We were happy. We were free. We enjoyed life. We enjoyed our families. We have bought into some weird stuff. Now,
well, I think you hit on a very key thing there. Yeah, I was going to say, James, you hit on a very key thing that he talked about consistently in his book is the idea of freedom. And true freedom comes from living like you're suggesting those people were living, you know, having that freedom to be able to make the decisions to choose what you want to do each day. But we buy into the fact that we need money to get us there, and obviously you're proving that that's not true.
Right. Money is just stored labor. That's all it is. It's a medium to go between one person and another person. And if you can find a way to get that person what they need and this other person what they need without going through money in the middle, the banks never get involved. Money never gets involved. People simply get what they want. We used to call them barter clubs. We still call them barter clubs. But neighborhood co-ops and anything like that works is just fine. I'm going to spend this whole weekend in a place in central Utah. We're setting up an intentional community. And it's all based on sustainability and family values and stuff like that. That's my retirement plan. To have a house that I own, on ground that I own, with neighbors that I trust and enjoy, and all of us growing our own food and stuff like that. Now, we're not hunker in the bunker types. We're perfectly willing to let people come over. In fact, we're teaching seminars on how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most architectural students don't even know it's possible to build off-grid. They bought into it from the word go because their professors, who have never been in the real world, are teaching them the way they were taught. Mm-hmm. And they were taught at the end of the Depression when all of a sudden you had money again. You could do things again. Mm-hmm. But some of the stuff has incredible longevity to it. You know, the stick and skin structures we normally build have their roots in the ancient Middle Ages, like about 800 to 1000 AD or so in Europe, when they ran out of stuff to build with. All the land barons took all the good rocks and all the good logs, so all the people in the middle were stuck with saplings, and that gradually evolved into 2x4s with stuff on the outside, and that evolved into this. But if you look back at it, it never did make sense. Mm-hmm. You know, their cob houses that were built in London, you know, back during the times of, you know, the Roman conquest, that are still being lived in today. My ancestors in Norway built sod houses to 300 AD, and the families are still living in them. Mm-hmm. You know, that made sense. When the pioneers came across the plains to western United States, the first thing they did on the way over was to build quick shelters out of sod. But as quickly as they could, they got out of these holes in the ground that were stable and tornado-proof and all the rest of this, and they started building these flimsy stick and skin things and put them on. They couldn't keep them warm in the winter. They couldn't keep them cool in the summer because that's what the rich people were doing. Mm-hmm. They never stood back and said, wait a second. This thing I'm calling a root cellar has got the roots in it because it's stable. The temperature doesn't change. It never freezes down there. Why am I living in this? The same thing happened with greenhouses in Europe. Everybody built their greenhouses. It was a mark of the aristocracy to have a greenhouse that you could put lime trees in and stuff. But nobody lived in it. But the whole point of a greenhouse or a root cellar is that it's stable. We need to live in our greenhouses and live in our root cellars. Mm-hmm. But we're not rational creatures. We're rationalizing creatures, as Spock said on Star Trek. And that's that. Sometimes we need to keep stepping back and asking questions until we either fall off the cliff or we know we've asked the right questions.
Exactly. Well, that's the key, you know, is again, it's getting people to think about why do they do the things they do. And it's funny how you hear, well, somebody said this, and so somebody said that, so they believe that it's true. They never actually question these things. And as you were talking about those homes, you know, the big rich ones, I remember last year that I went to, it was the Street of Dreams. And this was up on top of a mountain, or a hill or mount, whatever you want to call it, suburban hill, I guess. And here were these homes, 8, 10, 12,000 square feet. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, these are nice, but who in their right mind needs to live in a house this big? Yeah, I mean, these were like virtual small towns, and it was just amazing to me what people think they want to buy into.
Right. I was watching a show the other day on Home and Garden TV where people are going house hunting. And, you know, I was thinking to myself as they're going through these houses, people should look at your lifestyle and decide how often you're going to use this room. Mm-hmm. How often do you actually entertain? You know? Mm-hmm. And if you don't entertain 50 people 50 times a year, you don't need that room. That's a burden. It's a place to keep clean and stuff like that. Do you really need a kitchen that has 12 burners on the stoves if you don't entertain fairly often? And most people, when they really sit down and take a close look at themselves, realize they live in 3 rooms their whole lives. Mm-hmm. They live in the bedroom, they live in where their office is, and they live in the kitchen. And we have a bathroom, but, you know, we really don't live in our whole house. Mm-hmm. Even my daughter's house, where I'm right now, she doesn't live in most of this thing most of the time. But, you know, she's an attorney.
I got to do something.
At least she had the sense to have me come in and say, escape the yard. And they say, that's fine, honey. I'll come and do what you want. Of course, you know, never mind.
Yeah, like I said, you know, it's really amazing. I was going to say it's really amazing, again, what people buy into, that sort of herd mentality. This is the kind of home that you want to have because this is the American dream. the American dream truly was about you exploring your passions and getting them to become realized without any bias. It had nothing to do with all the material things that you were able to purchase once you were able to do that. And it's like, come on, let's get back to common sense again here.
Yeah, consumerism's gotten weird. And part of the reason is that my parents' era, which is the Depression era, they were so glad to actually have something they could fold in their pocket and buy something with it. They didn't think about what they were buying. Everybody could buy ice cream again. Everybody could buy a car again. Everybody could buy a house again. They never sat back and thought, do I need a car? Do I need this house? Do I really need the ice cream? They never thought to think that. They were just glad to be able to consume again. And the American economic system even has an index for that. If the economy is flat and everyone has what they need and everyone's essentially wealthy because they got $10 left at the end of the month, that doesn't fit the economic model. The economic model, in order to be solid, has to be growing. And that's a nonsense statement. You can't grow forever. We can't consume forever. We can't keep increasing forever. But everyone can be wealthy if we're all out of debt. We all have enough food to eat. We're warm or cool or whatever we want to be. And we have clothes and our kids are happy. Then we're all by definition wealthy, even if the economy is absolutely flat. But an economist hates that. They have no table to put that in. They have no way to wrap their minds around it. So it scares people. They don't want people dropping out of the banks. For one thing, it's the big brother thing. There's no way they can control people if you don't have any laws you have to adhere to, if you don't buy utilities, if you don't buy their stuff, and if you don't have money in the bank. I mean, I don't need a 501k or a 401k or a 201k or any other kind of a K because I have a house that grows its own food, and I own the thing. Why do I need all their stuff? And I don't. Nobody does, really, but we feel secure because we've been told we have to have a retirement plan. A retirement plan ought to be a way to retire, not relying on the banks to have money, whatever money means back then, And we have to look at our entire lives that way. Do you need the kind of legal services you got? Do you need the kind of medical program you've got? I was on Hillary Clinton's team, for looking at health care reform, for example, as an urban shaman. That was my function there. I said, what would you guys in the alternative medical community do about this? And I said, well, it's simple enough. You let everybody into the system that has something to offer, and you pay for it if and only if it works. And you get rid of malpractice with common law courts with no attorneys involved. And you do it under common law. Now, those three things would solve the health care crisis immediately, but none of them are politically viable. You can't kick attorneys out of the system. You can't tell the allopaths and the osteopaths and the chiropractors that they're not the only people on the heap, and they might not be on the heap at all. And you certainly can't say, well, we're only going to pay for the MRI if it shows me something. All of those are politically non-viable, but they would work. So we've got communities popping up all over the place where people stay well. The laughter yoga, touch therapies, things that are known to cure cancers and stuff. They're as simple as, go to the grocery store and buy some raw apple cider vinegar. There's lots of stuff that works. And we've forgotten how to look over what works. We've allowed other people to tell us what to do. Every state has a division of professional licensing that says these guys can do it right, nobody else can. But just because someone's been to school and learned how to be a contractor doesn't mean he's the only guy that knows how to swing a hammer. So we need to get back to thinking for ourselves.
For those of you just joining us, we're talking with Dr. James Torgerson on urban shamanism and ecolonomics. I think that's an actually interesting word there, as it is a blend of ecology and economics. Now, when you were talking about healthcare, there are a lot of real obvious solutions out there, but that's the other thing, too, is that we have been bled into the fear or it's being used with us to believe that we have security. So you go out and you get health care coverage because that allegedly protects you in case something really bad happens. And here's what I always found funny is there was a time that I was selling what they called a health savings account program. And basically what you do is you pay a membership fee, and I'm sure you understand how it works. And then you go to their preferred providers and you get about 30 to 50% discount, but you're paying as you go. And then part of what you do is you put some money aside so when you do need to go see the doctor, then it's there. But, this day and age, how many Americans actually have the discipline to save money? But here's what was really funny is people would be interested. So I would sit down and I would meet with them. Now, these people had nothing. Then I would show them how the program works, and immediately the most consistent response I would get is, well, what if something major happens? And I'm saying, okay, you've been without health care for 15 years. You wanted to see this, and now you're concerned about that. What were you doing about it before?
Yeah, my biggest concern with any kind of a prepaid formula that's insurance or whatever is that it's limited as to what your options are.
Right.
I mean, let's say your best option is to do a sweat lodge and take a weekend retreat doing yoga. How many health care plans cover that? They're not outcome-based. They're provider-based. And I've never seen one yet except the one that we're creating that's actually outcome-based. Now, if it was outcome-based, then we wouldn't find people getting coronary artery bypass grafts because they don't have a good outcome, as a rule. We wouldn't find people doing lower back surgery because they don't have a good outcome. And if you put a sliding scale as to what the expense is compared to what actually works, then most of the quote-unquote alternatives are much better. I get calls all the day from quote-unquote MDs in the area. Now, I'm an MD, but I'm not licensed because I went out into alternative health. And they call and say, okay, I've got this nasty infection. It's not responding to the antibiotics. And I said, and? They said, well, what do we do? I say, okay, go in the backyard of the hospital. I want you to look for this plant, this tree, and then go down to the Safeway on the corner and buy this, this, and this. Mix them all together, let it wait for 2 days, and then soak a cloth in it, put it on his head, and call me back in a week. And they always called back and said, yep, sure enough, that worked. That's a combination of cheap stuff. The pharmaceuticals hate that. They spent $200 million in 20 years developing a drug that the bacteria get used to after a few hits, and the hospital's the worst place to get an infection because that's where all the worst stuff goes anyway. But garlic still works. Mullein still works. Plantain still works. Sunlight still works. Walnuts still work. All the stuff that's been out there forever. I mean, if you think about it, there's been a war going on all around us forever. So it's not surprising that putting raw honey on a wound will kill bacteria. Because the bees have had millions and millions and millions of years to figure out how to make honey that doesn't rot. So you think, oh, wow, that's just a head slapper. Why didn't we think of that before? And we have thought of it before. There's nothing really new out there. My friend from Africa was laughing at the whole penicillin thing. He says, you know what? The shamans in my country have been putting moldy bread on cuts for longer than we can remember. Take moldy bread, soak it in honey, bind it on it, and say, now go home and get better. And it works. Still works. And it's a lot cheaper than tribiotics. We like I said before, we need to learn to sit back and say, what's really going on here? Who is got the money? Where's this thing all coming from? Where's it all going? And what do I really want out of life? It's not so much that I want alternative health care. What I want to do is stay happy, healthy, and wealthy in terms that actually makes sense, and not fear-based. I don't want to buy insurance in case I get sick. I want to stay well and feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that was what, this particular program I was describing was really, about you realizing that taking care of yourself is more affordable than you think it is. It's like when people get worried about having to go to the dentist. And I'd asked some years ago, I said, well, to an actual dental office, I said, what is the best dental insurance out there? And they said, the truth is there isn't any. And she says, honestly, you're just better off paying as you go. And a lot of times dental offices will just work with you, where you can pay a little bit at a time, whatever the case is. And I realized that as I had dental work, I was able to actually pay for it out of pocket. It was very affordable. But, people need that insurance because somebody made us believe under a false sense of security that would protect us. But as you're saying, well, how are you at this moment? Is it working? And you're paying for it anyway.
And I like trading for stuff myself. My dentist fixed my last chipped tooth, and I made him a Gandalf wizard staff.
There you go.
Gets a kick out of it. He thinks that's all right. And he took it home and said, look what I got. He said, what did you get for that? And he said, we got a chipped tooth fixed. But I always wanted one of these. So what the heck? If you arrange for people to need what they need all the way around on an ongoing basis, we don't need to function under fear. What happens if? What happens if? What happens if? You got to protect yourself to a certain extent. And I see the sense in having car insurance in case you run into somebody or whatever. But so much of what we're doing is not based on a rational look at human psychology and sociology. It's based on all this other weird stuff. People have agendas that don't match our own agendas. The banks have agendas. They have to. And anytime you start paying interest, eventually all the money trickles upstairs to the banks. And who's got it? The banks do. Why go into debt? If you can go out and, for basically, I know a bunch of my friends, for example, a bunch of people I know are just walking away from their mortgages. because they don't need this huge house. They don't need this huge payment. For 2 months' payment, they can build a house that they own. So they simply say, okay, I'm just going to walk away. When they come and take my house, I'll be gone. And I'll take the money. You know, in fact, I'll deed it back to the bank and make it easy for them. But I'll take the money I would have paid for 2 months' mortgage and build a house that I live in and own now. And I've got the herbs and stuff in the backyard. I'm taking classes from Dr. Torg. I go by Torg, by the way.
Torg, okay.
And, you know, if I can stay healthy, eating smart, then why do I need to worry about the rest of this stuff? And we don't. We worry way too much about all the wrong things. I went out to one of our intersections once a few months ago, and I counted the number of cars coming into Salt Lake City and what they were. And they were almost all in the SUV range, being driven by a single person and dressed fairly well. Now, you know that most of those people are going to an office where they spend the day working on a computer. So not only did they clog up the freeway system with single-car drivers, they went into town to work on a computer. They could have stayed at home and worked on that computer, and we could have freeways half the size that we have now. They wouldn't need a car at all, probably. And if they're living in an off-grid house, they could work, 5 or 6 hours a week for the fun stuff and leave the other 35 hours to somebody else who hasn't gotten involved yet. It's just weird. If the aliens are watching us, they must be laughing so hard.
We're their laughter yoga, so to speak.
Exactly. They're saying, hey, look at these funny people down here. What are they doing? They drive back and forth and drive back and forth and drive back and forth. Spend, huge chunk of our time driving back and forth in the vehicle. Part of the driving back and forth is just to afford the vehicle itself. And most of the rest of us afford the vehicle's house to park it in. It's insane. There's simply another word for it than insane.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we're talking about this, and again, over the 5 years we've been doing our program, we've really brought out on a very consistent basis people like yourself that say, why have we been thinking this way? We already know that there's something that's just not right about this, and showing alternatives and solutions as well that make a lot of common sense. And I sometimes wonder, because I know in myself I have a struggle, because it's an old belief about the traditional way that you go about things. The idea is that you go to school, you go to college, you get a good career, you get yourself a mortgage, you raise a family, and then you build for retirement after you've paid off their college educations. But there was always something about that bothered me, and I chose not to live that particular way. In fact, more of the Buddhist live simply so others can simply live. But then I find myself in situations that challenge that and make me a little unsettled as I see other people. It could even be envy. Why didn't I get that for myself, or why don't I deserve that for myself? Do you find or experience that people have, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, a nervous breakdown? And how do they get through that to where they realize this is truly a better way to live and there's a lot more abundance going this direction?
Well, people like boxes. It doesn't make sense. We don't like to admit that, but we love boxes. We like to know that if we get out that the sun's going to come up in the morning and go down at night, like Annie says. Or we like to know that if we get to work, there's something to do every day. We like to feel our purpose is laid out for us. We don't want to have to think about it. I do a lot of work with resource kids at local high schools, and these kids have been dropped by the system because they're too smart, too stupid, whatever, to fit in the bell curve. I like to call them bell curve academies, But they don't live in a box. And some of these kids, I said, you know what, your problem is that you're brilliant and the teachers are too stupid to see it. And a bunch of these kids got so happy about that once they wrote us a whole book to sell at one of our galleries called Out of the Box. And it's full of that gorgeous poetry and artwork and songs and things they compose and all that stuff. And the cover of it is a box with the top open. But the kids aren't climbing out the box. They're cutting holes in the side. They're mining under it. One kid's setting a bunch of dynamite off in a corner to see if he can't do something. Another kid's setting fire to see if he can't burn the box down forever. These kids are not only out of the box, they're figuring creative ways of getting out of it. They don't believe it. I don't believe in boxes. And I always ask someone, when they first come in my office, I say, okay, this is an intelligence test, so I'm not being insulting, but why are you doing this, and what do you want from me, and why? Now, if you want a better lifestyle, we can talk about that. But I'm not going to help you fix the lifestyle you're in right now without having you take a real close look at it first. Everyone's in a box. I'm in a box. And I sit back fairly often and say, okay, what's my box right now, and do I like it? Now, you can choose a box. But the point is you can choose, and most of us don't bother. We're living in boxes our parents set up, that the government set up, that the medical profession set up. I mean, we gradually whittle away our Constitution. We don't even use it anymore. And try to get people to think about, oh, we have a Constitution. It gives us rights. Oh, it doesn't. It protects those rights theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
But we've whittled away at it so long that it was almost impossible to get to it. You know, we need to think, and that's the hardest part. Trying to teach kids to think is not easy because they've been programmed to visualize the world in sound bites, little 10 minutes with a segue in between, where all your problems get solved in either a half hour or 1 hour, depending on what TV programs you watch most often.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole world circumscribed by electronics, and we've noticed this in the way the kids drive nowadays. They somehow have this place in their brain that says, I can crash as often as I want, and I can just hit reset, you know? And it's scary to actually drive like that. Mm-hmm. They don't realize that people get shot with guns actually die.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, it's weird.
Mm-hmm. I'm also
life is weird.
Been astonished, too, at the emergence show. You always kind of think about technology and has it actually made our lives better? And I know that in some aspects it has, but in some you're kind of thinking, okay, what's the point of that? And I guess one of my biggest irritations out there is the cellular phone. You know, here's these people, it's almost like a heroin addict, except when the heroin addict injects the heroin, they set the needle down. These people hold that damn thing like it's a part of their hand, and it's like, what is the point of that?
Yeah, I like cell phones because I stay in touch, but I hate them because I stay in touch.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes I don't want to be in touch. I want to go on retreat for a while and not have anybody in the universe, except maybe God, the Mother and Father, or Gaia, whatever, knowing where I am. On the other hand, I would have a really impossible time handling my profession right now without the Internet.
Mm-hmm.
I need that kind of information accessibility. I remember when I first started this, 45 years ago, no one had conceived of this. We were just developing our first computers back then and stuff like that. In fact, I remember I was the first guy in my physics class to have a handheld calculator. And it was like the size of a big gulp.
Right. I remember those.
And it did all 4 functions, and there was a button on top for a square root. But they didn't know if they wanted to let me use it because it gave me an unfair advantage over the other guys that were using slide rules. Technology can be beautiful like any other tool. And I love the Internet. But I also hate the Internet. Pop-ups come in there and creep into your life. The best virus protection I've got, and I've got like 5 of them running, are always hitting things and stopping stuff from me. So it's one more road for people to get to you and for you to get to other people. And using it smart's not easy. Kids get addicted to it. Adults get addicted to it. I watch, some of my foster kids, and they, will literally spend 24 hours a day on, their video games, playing with other kids, which is an interaction form, but it's all electronic. They have no idea what these other kids look like. They don't even know if they're male or female. They're just something that's an electronic signal that's fighting them on their video game. And that's terrifying to me. That's not a survival technique. That's not an enjoyable technique. These kids are, a couple of them are, mixed race, and they're getting pale. They're inside all the time. And here I am, I'm saying, let's go for a hike. What, you mean the outside? Can I bring my iPhone? No. Well, why would I want to do that? Because there are plants out there. There are animals out there. There's the sun out there. When's the last time you walked up a mountain and looked at the sky? Oh, that's just old guy talk. No, I don't think so. I think that's smart talk. Of course, I am an old guy, so it's hard to come from that point of view.
You don't sound
on the other hand, it's pretty sad when a 57-year-old guy can beat out an 18-year-old kid going up a hill.
Yeah, exactly. The lethargy that's happening out there. I know. I was just recently, when I do watch TV, it's usually movies and documentaries. And I was just watching a movie recently called Indian Summer, and it's about some 40-somethings actually settled into life. They go back to a summer camp that they used to go as kids. And the reason is because the camp owner wants to be able to pass the camp on to whoever wants it to run it. And it's actually a real camp. It's Camp Tamaqua, actually. And it was interesting because he says that after 42 years that it's time for him to walk away, and they wanted to know why. And he says, I just don't get the kids today. They come up and they've got these Walkmans and the earphones, and somebody who needs to be out in nature like that, I just don't understand them. And he was totally right that, when you out there, you're out to listen, to feel, to experience. And it's amazing the kind of transformation something like that can create in you when you can leave the technology behind and enjoy it as it is.
Yeah, I take my shaman students out at a certain point and have them see if they can feel the life under them. And they're not allowed to have any electronics or anything like that. And I had a bunch of them out on Timpanogos Mountain here, which is just crawling with wildlife, if you know what you're looking for. Both kinds of deer. There are moose up there. There are cougar. There's bighorn sheep. There's just basically everything. But most people walk along there like it's a hike. You know, they're going out to get some exercise. They crawl up there, and then I said, "What'd you think of that stream back there?" They didn't even notice the stream. They didn't notice the waterfall. They didn't notice the plants, the flowers, the animals. I mean, a moose could crash on the trail in front of them, and that might startle them to say, "Whoa, what is that thing?" You know, but not really. Mm-hmm. And I've had people come up where I'm just sitting in a field, doing nothing but just listening with 3 or 4 students. They'll come and say, "What are you guys doing?" Well, until you came crashing through here, we were watching a whole herd of bighorn sheep on the other side of the field. But they came up making all this noise and all this racket and stuff like that, not aware at all of what's going on. I said, well, everybody tells us there's wildlife all over here, but we never noticed it. And I'd say, have you thought about being quiet and listening? Have you thought about just sitting on a rock and seeing how many different kinds of insects and stuff you can actually hear? Have you thought about camping overnight without a fire and just watching the stars go overhead? It's a skill we've lost. It's a connectedness with the universe that we just simply have lost. I used to, sell preparedness resources for people, 72-hour kits and all this stuff. And the Salt Lake Valley has about 500,000 people in it, and it's high desert biome, so it doesn't really produce a huge amount of its own food. So I would ask people, I said, okay, you're living in an import city, which means you have to have imports to stay alive. And any city in the United States of over 100,000 people really is. I said, what will you do if the earthquake hits and the roads get cut? Oh, we'll just go up in the mountains and shoot deer. Right. That's it. That's their survival plan. I said, okay, when's the last time you went for a 5-mile walk? When's the last time you actually shot a deer? If you shoot your deer, do you know how to cut it open? Can you start a fire without matches? Mm-hmm. Do you know what plants are edible up there? And, you get them thinking and say, well, you're just making fun of me. No, I'm not making fun of you.
Well, you were the one that provided the solution, so I'm just asking how well you understand it.
Exactly. And, we figured at one point, I belong to a thing called the Society for a Sustainable Future, and also the American Society for Concerned Scientists and stuff like that, and we're seriously worried that a lot of people are just in that mindset. It's a completely alien mindset to survival. They could not possibly do that. So we figure if the 500,000 people in Salt Lake, if something cut off everything, they put a bubble over it and said the universe cannot get to you, within the first 2 weeks, 200,000 people would die. Either because they get depressed and sit down and eat, or because they're marauders killing each other, or because they're absolutely dependent on technology for oxygen, insulin, or whatever. So you got 2/5 of the population is dead within 2 weeks. This is not a fun scenario. Now, people that have a shamanic outlook would know exactly what to do about that. They'd prepare for it, and they would really prepare for it. And that's not putting so many, cans of chili in the fridge. This means I can create myself a sustainable future someplace, and they would know how to get out of the situation. They might be able to walk up in the mountain. I could walk up in the mountains and survive, but there's probably no more than, maybe 20,000 people in Salt Lake Valley that actually have enough skills to get up there and do that. And we'd be having fun because we'd hike for 10 miles and get away from everybody because all the other people would, pass out, faint, and die, and quit. But still, that was the mindset. I heard this over and over and over again. We'll just go up and live off nature. Really?
Yeah. Well, it's funny how you describe the guy, who would go up on the mountain and shoot a deer. He thinks he's just walking into a video arcade and the deer's just going to pose until he gets shot. And it's like, you realize what you need to do just to get to one.
Yeah, I'd ask him simple questions. How long is that deer going to be edible?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and how do you store, yeah.
If it's winter, if it's winter and it freezes, then, you got a fair amount of time. But you can live on just deer. I mean, say you get real lucky and you kill one. Well, if it's the summer, you got 2 days' worth of food and the rest of it rots and attracts flies and everything else. Then you got to move your campsite and find another one. Do it over again. Mm. Do you know how to dry? Do you know how to make jerky and not attract local bears and stuff like that? No, what they used to is going out with a bunch of buddies, getting drunk and shoot a deer and take it to a game processing place and put it in the freezer. Mm-hmm. That's what they know about outdoor survival. But, I say, what can you eat grass? Well, no, actually you can if you know what you're doing. Can you eat this? No. Well, actually you can if you know what you're doing. The wilderness is full of stuff you can survive with if you know what you're doing. But we spent so much of our time learning how not to worry about that. I mean, think of it. All our water comes into our houses through hidden lines, and it's clean. Our water goes out of the house in hidden porcelain and lines, and we never see it. We never see the results of what we're doing. Our power comes in through these invisible things, and no one's ever seen an electron. We just accept it because we've been doing it our whole lives. But it's all hidden. The effects of everything we do is hidden from us. We're living in literal boxes with flat roofs and flat walls and painted with toxic chemicals and stuff, and we think this is living. The people who are really living are the ones that say, wow, I planted that seed 3 weeks ago. Now I'm harvesting it, and when I'm done with what I want, it goes back out into the garden as compost or human manure or whatever, and the whole cycle of life is right here in front of me. I'm part of it, and we are part of it whether we want to be or not. And if you're living in New York, you can still put a compost bin on your windowsill and grow your own herbs and stuff like that. You can have pets in the house. You can put a rooftop garden up. One of the people on our website is a gal called the Garden Girl, and she lives in New York and teaches people how to garden in New York sustainably. Very popular program. It's very shamanic.
I'll tell you, it's certainly a wonderful element for people to actually change their habits and, in fact, pretty much change their lives entirely. And I think would find more joy and happiness just in moving more toward this direction than the folly of the perceived American dream, which is about consuming and bigger is better, and I'm on top, you're on the bottom. And that's not really what the American dream is. It was about the experiment to individually be who you are and to prosper as you are with what you have. And I was going to ask you, what is the website people can go to, and how can they? There's classes, I believe, and seminars and things that you do.
There's a whole lot there, actually. We've been in business as a foundation for about 25 years now.
Okay.
And it's always all been about empowerment. In fact, our logo, or our motto, rather, is assisting all life in achieving its greatest potential. Mm-hmm. And the best website to go to is called theempowermentchannel.org. And it's got most of our active stuff on there. There's a segment there called Ask Torg. I'm kind of the Mr. Wizard for the site with all the answers. Mm-hmm. But it's got interesting links to all kinds of stuff, everything from free speech to constitutional concepts to how to build an off-grid house and how to build a mulching toilet. And we've got about 5 more programs coming up soon. We've had some technical glitches. Our computer dropped our interface for a camera and stuff like that. But, except for little things like that get in there with the gnomes, mm-hmm. we're up and running. But that's the best one to get to.
And what was that one again?
EmpowermentChannel.org.
Empowerment Channel.
And if you can't get the .org to come up, just Google Empowerment Channel and it'll pop up for you. We've got lots of fun stuff. We love to have people call up and say, wow, can I take a class in this? We're teaching classes this weekend on building cob houses and personal 3-second defense. Mm-hmm. Anything that's empowering we're trying to get into. Mm-hmm. I'll actually be doing most of the cooking for the conference, teaching people how to preparing food, rather, One of my hats is nutrition chef, and I take people's recipes and fix them. Get away from the old world heavy creams and all this kind of stuff and find a healthy way to eat and stuff. I enjoy wearing as many hats as possible.
As we should. That's what life is about the great experiment to find, how much can you do. It's sort of as Bill Murray discovered in the movie Groundhog Day. Well, if I'm going to have to relive this day over and over and over, I can grow. What's that?
I love that movie.
Mm-hmm. But it's so true,
Sometimes, what I liked about that movie was where he's sitting there with those 3 guys and said, how would you feel if every day you lived was exactly the same, nothing you did made a bit of difference? I said, that's kind of what it's like. And these guys in their normal life. Uh-huh. He's talking about this weird whip thing, I looked at that and said, yeah, most people like that. Well, what do you put on your gravestone? Oh, gee, I went to work every day 9 to 5, and I retired when I was 65 and died a year later. Mm-hmm. No, thanks. Not for me.
Not at all. Well, again, it's Urban Shamanism and our guest, Dr. James Torg. And thank you for joining us here on the program. And go ahead and give that website out again one more time.
Okay, it's empowermentchannel.org. Okay. And we even have degrees we can offer through our own university and stuff. So if people want to learn how to be a shaman and get university credit for it, give us a call. Give us whatever.
That's great.
You're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. All right, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much again for joining us on the program today. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. I had a great time.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Okay.
And there it is. So urban shamanism, it's time for us to think outside the box because obviously, as you're hearing in the news, and nobody's going to let us stop hearing about it, the way that we're taught to live the American dream, it just doesn't seem to be working too well. Maybe for some, but not for others. But why can't it work for everybody if it's in the right light? Urban shamanism. I want to thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. And sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. I'm sure we'll have some great urban shamanism on there as you receive that. It goes out every week, always fresh, always new. I'm Daniel Davis. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Again, thank you for joining us. And remember, live your day past halfway.